He was the king of a Manhattan empire, a self-made millionaire who had everything he ever wanted. She was his devoted wife, the woman who stood by him, the anchor to his ambition. For years, Elena Park believed their love was the foundation of the life they built. The sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, the glittering parties, the future she thought was written in stone. But as she carried their first child, a chilling distance began to grow, a silence that no amount of money could fill. The night their son fought his way into the world, Elena fought for her own life on an operating table, completely alone. Her husband, Nathan Harrington, was nowhere to be found. The reason for his absence wouldn't just break her heart. It would become a public scandal that would stun the world, revealing a devastating secret that threatened to destroy them all. The August air hung thick and heavy over New York City, a blanket of heat that even the industrial-strength air conditioning of their penthouse couldn't entirely defeat. Elena Park pressed a hand to the small of her back, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the hazy expanse of Central Park below. From 50 stories up, the city looked serene, a meticulously crafted model of the world Nathan had conquered. It was beautiful, but it felt like a gilded cage. Their life, once a whirlwind of shared dreams and late-night laughter in a cramped walk-up apartment, had become a series of scheduled appearances. Nathan, the self-made tech mogul behind the billion-dollar Harrington Innovations, was a ghost in their home, a phantom who smelled of expensive cologne and ambition. He left before she woke, a kiss pressed to her forehead, so fleeting she sometimes wondered if she'd imagined it. He returned long after she'd fallen asleep, the glow of his phone the only light in their cavernous bedroom. "He's closing the biggest deal of his life, Lena," her mother, Ellen, had said over the phone just that morning. "Men like that, they operate on a different frequency. You have to be patient." Elena was tired of being patient. She was 34 years old and 7 weeks pregnant with a baby Nathan didn't even know about yet. She'd been waiting for the perfect moment to tell him, a moment when he wasn't distracted by stock prices or a conference call with Tokyo. She imagined his face lighting up, the old Nathan reappearing from behind the hardened mask of the CEO. She pictured him dropping to his knees, pressing his ear to her still flat stomach, the deal of a lifetime forgotten in the face of the life they had created. That evening she'd planned it all. His favorite meal, braised short ribs, was simmering on the stove. A bottle of vintage Bordeaux he'd been saving was decanted on the marble island, and in a small, elegant box on the dining room table was a pair of tiny knitted booties and a positive pregnancy test. But 8 p.m. came and went. Then 9 p.m. The short ribs grew cold. At 10:17 p.m., his text finally came. "Stuck in a meeting. Don't wait up." Tears pricked at Elena's eyes, hot and sharp. She sank onto one of the ridiculously expensive dining chairs, the silence of the apartment amplifying her loneliness. This wasn't the life she had signed up for. She had fallen in love with Nathan Harrington, the brilliant, hungry coder who sketched out business plans on cocktail napkins, not the titan of industry who communicated with his wife via his assistant, Clara Brooks. Clara, a woman so efficient and polished, she seemed less human and more like one of Nathan's patented smart devices. Elena's best friend, Sophia Nguyen, had warned her. "He's married to the company, Elle. You're just the beautiful, supportive wife they feature in the magazine profiles." "That's not fair, Soph," Elena had argued, defending him out of habit. "He's building an empire for us, for our future." "What future?" Sophia had shot back, her voice softening. "A future where you eat dinner alone every night?" Now, sitting in the pristine, silent dining room, Sophia's words echoed in her ears. Defeated, Elena cleared the table, her heart aching with a familiar blend of disappointment and love. She put the booties back in their box and tucked it away in a drawer. It wasn't the right time. She was changing into her pajamas when she heard the front door click open. Nathan was home. She walked into the living room to see him shrugging off his suit jacket, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He looked older than his 36 years, the lines around his eyes deeper than she remembered. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Sorry. Victor Chen is trying to poach our lead engineer. It's a whole mess." Victor Chen, Nathan's business rival. The name was always spoken like a curse in their home. "It's okay," she lied, forcing a smile. "Rough day?" He nodded, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "The usual. I'm going to grab a shower." He started toward the bedroom, then paused, turning back to her. For a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she'd married in his eyes, a hint of vulnerability, of regret. "Are you okay? You seem quiet." This was it, her opening, her heart hammered against her ribs. "Just tell him." "I'm fine," she heard herself say instead. "Just tired." The moment passed. The mask was back in place. "Okay," he said, and disappeared into the bedroom. Later, as she lay in bed, pretending to be asleep, she felt him slide in beside her. He didn't touch her. He just lay there, a warm, familiar presence who felt a million miles away. She listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing and clutched her stomach, a silent promise to the tiny life growing inside her. "He'll be happy," she told herself. "He just needs to get through this deal. Then everything will go back to the way it was." It was a lie, and she knew it, but it was the only thing holding her together. A week later, she finally told him. He had come home early for once, a peace offering of her favorite takeout from a little Italian place in the West Village. As they ate, sitting on the floor of the living room like they used to in their old apartment, she felt a surge of hope. "I have something for you," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she handed him the little box. He opened it, his brow furrowed in confusion as he looked at the booties. Then he saw the pregnancy test tucked underneath. He stared at it, his face unreadable. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words. Elena held her breath. Finally, he looked up at her, his eyes wide. Are you serious?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We're having a baby, Nathan." He was across the floor in an instant, pulling her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "A baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Oh, Lena. A baby." He held her for a long time, and for the first time in months, the gilded cage felt like a home. He was back. Her Nathan was back. He talked excitedly about turning the guest room into a nursery, about baby-proofing the penthouse, about taking a real vacation after the deal was closed. "Everything is going to be different now," he promised, cupping her face in his hands. "I promise." And Elena, desperate and hopeful, believed him. She let herself believe that this baby was not just the beginning of their family, but the salvation of their marriage. She didn't know it was just the beginning of the end. The initial euphoria lasted for 3 blissful weeks. Nathan was more present than he had been in years. He came home for dinner. He accompanied her to her first ultrasound, his eyes welling up as they listened to the frantic, fluttering heartbeat of their child. He would talk to her belly, telling the baby about his day, about his dreams for them. Eleanor felt herself exhale a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding for 2 years. But empires aren't built between the hours of 9 and 5. Slowly, inevitably, the late nights crept back in. The missed dinners became more frequent. The ghost returned. The excuse was always the same: the deal. It was a monstrous, all-consuming entity, and Victor Chen was always lurking, ready to sabotage it. "It's the final push, Lena," Nathan would say, his hand on her growing belly. I'm doing this for you. For him. They knew it was a boy. I want our son to have everything. Elena wanted his father. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late October. Nathan had been in back-to-back meetings all day, and Elena was trying to assemble a crib, the Swedish instructions mocking her. Frustrated, she went looking for a toolkit in Nathan's home office, a sleek, minimalist space she rarely entered. She didn't find the toolkit, but she did find his gym bag, carelessly left on the floor. As she moved it, a phone slid out from a side pocket. It wasn't his usual phone. This one was a different model, encased in a plain black cover. A cold dread washed over her. There was only one reason a man like Nathan had a second phone. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. It was unlocked. Her thumb hovered over the messaging app. "Don't do it!" a voice in her head screamed. "Whatever you find, you can't unsee it." But the doubt, the tiny seed of suspicion that had been planted by months of loneliness, was now a suffocating vine. She had to know. She opened the app. There was only one conversation, a long thread with a contact, simply named K. K, you were incredible last night. Nathan, you bring it out of me. K, can't stop thinking about that hotel room. When can I see you again? Nathan, soon. This deal is killing me. I need the escape. K, I'm your favorite escape. Don't forget it. I'm finalizing the plans for the launch party. It's going to be spectacular, you'll see. Elena scrolled up, her vision blurring. There were months of messages, flirtatious banter, inside jokes, explicit details of hotel rooms and stolen afternoons. They talked about art, about music, about things she and Nathan hadn't discussed in years. It was more than just physical. It was an entire relationship, a secret life lived in, parallel to their own. Kay was Karina Morales, a high-profile event planner they'd met at a charity gala. Elena remembered her, stunning, sharp and ambitious. She remembered the way Karina had looked at Nathan. The air left Elena's lungs. The penthouse, her beautiful home, suddenly felt like a crime scene. Every promise, every tender moment from the past few months was now tainted. A lie. The baby kicked, a sharp, insistent jab, as if he could feel his mother's world shattering. She sank to the floor, the phone clutched in her hand, a wave of nausea rolling over her. She thought of the ultrasound, of Nathan's tears. Were they real? Or was it all just part of the performance? She immediately called Sophia. "Can you come over?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Something's happened." Sophia arrived within the hour, her face a mask of concern. Elena, still on the office floor, simply handed her the phone. Sophia read the messages, her expression hardening from worry to fury. "That absolute son of a bitch," Sophia breathed, her voice low and dangerous. "I'm going to kill him. What do I do?" Elena sobbed, wrapping her arms around her belly. "Soph, what am I supposed to do?" "You leave," Sophia said, her tone firm. "You pack a bag, and you come stay with me. You don't say a word. You just disappear. Let him feel what it's like to come home to an empty apartment." But the thought of leaving felt impossible. This was her home. This was her life. And she was carrying his child. "I have to talk to him," Eleanor insisted. "I have to hear him say it to my face." "And what if he lies?" Sophia challenged. "What if he tells you it was nothing, that it's over, that you're the one he loves? Are you strong enough to walk away then?" Elena didn't have an answer. She decided to wait until he came home, to confront him with the evidence in her hands. She would be calm. She would be rational. She would demand the truth. She rehearsed the conversation in her head 100 times, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. As the hours ticked by, a sharp, cramping pain seized her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. It came again, stronger this time. A wave of panic, cold and terrifying, washed over her. She looked down and saw a dark spot of blood on her maternity jeans. No, not now, not the baby. Forgetting everything about the phone, about Karina, about the confrontation, she scrambled for her own phone, her fingers fumbling as she dialed Nathan's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She called his office. Clara answered, her voice crisp and professional. "I'm sorry, Elena, but Mr. Harrington is in a critical meeting and cannot be disturbed." "It's an emergency, Clara," Elena cried, the pain making her vision swim. "You have to get him. I'm bleeding." There was a slight pause on the other end. "I'll pass along the message as soon as there's an opening," Clara said, her tone unchanged. The line went dead. The pain was blinding now. Elena collapsed onto the floor, her hand pressed against her belly, whispering her son's name over and over again. She was alone. Utterly and completely alone. With a surge of adrenaline, she dialed 911, her voice a choked whisper as she gave the dispatcher her address. The last thing she remembered before the darkness closed in was the wail of a distant siren, a sound that felt like the scream trapped in her own throat. The paramedics were a whirlwind of calm efficiency, their voices a low murmur as they strapped Elena onto a gurney. The familiar luxury of her apartment blurred into a chaotic mess of medical equipment and urgent commands. As they wheeled her out, her eyes fell on the second phone, still lying on the office floor, its screen dark, a monument to her husband's betrayal. In the ambulance, the wail of the siren was deafening, a soundtrack to her terror. The pain in her abdomen was a relentless, tearing fire. A paramedic held an oxygen mask to her face. "Just breathe," he said, his eyes kind. "We're almost at Redwood Medical." All she could think about was Nathan. Where was he? Did Clara give him the message? Was he on his way? Even after what she'd discovered, a primal part of her needed him. Needed his hand to hold, his voice to tell her everything would be okay. At the hospital, the emergency room was a blur of bright lights and sharp, antiseptic smells. A team of doctors and nurses descended on her. Dr. Nora Patel, her OB-GYN, was there, her usually warm face etched with serious concern. "Elena, we need to move fast," Dr. Patel said, her voice steady and reassuring as she examined her. "You have a severe placental abruption. The baby is in distress. We need to do an emergency C-section, right now." The words hit Elena with the force of a physical blow. C-section? But I'm only 32 weeks. "I know it's early, but it's the only way to save both of you," Dr. Patel explained, already motioning for the nurses to prep her for surgery. "My husband," Elena gasped, her eyes scanning the hallway. "Is he here? Did anyone call him?" A nurse gave her a sympathetic look. "We've tried his number multiple times, honey. It goes straight to voicemail." The last sliver of hope inside her crumbled into dust. He wasn't coming. He was in his critical meeting, closing his deal, while she and their son were fighting for their lives. As they wheeled her toward the operating room, her mother, Ellen, burst through the emergency room doors, her face pale with panic. "Oh, my baby girl," she cried, rushing to her side. "Mom," Elena sobbed, gripping her mother's hand. "I'm so scared." "I'm here. I'm right here," Ellen promised, her own tears flowing freely. "You're not alone," but she was. The one person who should have been there, the one person who had promised to protect her and their son, was absent. The operating room was cold and sterile. The anesthesiologist spoke to her in a soothing voice, but she could barely register his words. All she could hear was the frantic beeping of the monitors, a sound that mirrored the frantic beating of her own heart. A screen was put up, blocking her view. She felt a strange tugging sensation. And then, after what felt like an eternity, a tiny, weak cry pierced the air. "He's here, Elena," Dr. Patel announced, her voice filled with relief. "You have a son." A nurse brought him over for a fleeting moment. He was so small, so fragile, his skin red and wrinkled. His eyes were squeezed shut, his tiny mouth open in a silent protest. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. They placed him in a portable incubator and whisked him away to the neonatal intensive care unit before she could even touch him. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "He's a fighter," Dr. Patel said, "but he has a long road ahead. He's in the best hands now." As the exhaustion and the drugs pulled her under, her last conscious thought was of Nathan. She pictured him in a boardroom, powerful and confident, completely oblivious to the fact that his son had just been born. The bitterness was a poison in her veins. She woke up hours later in a private recovery room. Ellen was asleep in a chair by her bed, her hand resting on Eleanor's arm. The pain in her abdomen was a dull, throbbing ache, a physical reminder of the trauma. But it was nothing compared to the gaping wound in her heart. She reached for her phone on the bedside table. No missed calls from Nathan, no texts, just a single curt email from Clara Brooks sent an hour ago. "Mr. Harrington has been informed of the situation and will be there as soon as he is able. As soon as he is able." The words were so cold, so corporate. Her husband wasn't rushing to her side. He was waiting for an opening in his schedule. She scrolled through her news feed, a masochistic impulse she couldn't control. And that's when she saw it. A headline from a popular gossip site. "Tech mogul Nathan Harrington celebrates his new empire." Beneath it was a photo. Nathan, smiling, holding a glass of champagne. His arm was around a woman in a stunning emerald green dress. Karina Morales. They were standing in front of a banner that read, "Harrington Innovations and Morales Events, Present, the Future." In the bottom corner of the photo was a time stamp, 10:45 p.m., the exact time their son was being born. A guttural sound escaped Elena's throat, a mix of a sob and a scream. Ellen jolted awake, rushing to her side. "What is it, honey? What's wrong?" Elena couldn't speak. She just pointed at the phone screen, her finger trembling. Ellen looked at the photo, and her face went from confusion to disbelief to pure, unadulterated rage. "That bastard," she whispered, her voice shaking. "That absolute bastard." Eleanor stared at the picture, at her husband's triumphant smile. He wasn't in a meeting. He was at a party, celebrating with his mistress, while his wife was in surgery, while his son was fighting for his life. The heartbreak was gone, replaced by something cold and hard and sharp. It was an anger so profound it felt like it could burn the entire city to the ground. She had been a fool. She had believed his lies, his promises, his performance of a devoted husband. But the performance was over. The curtain had been pulled back, and the truth was uglier than she could have ever imagined. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had abandoned them. And that was a sin she would never, ever forgive. The hospital room, once a sanctuary of recovery, now felt like a pressure cooker. The photo on her phone was a digital bomb that had detonated in the quiet of the night, and the fallout was just beginning. Elena felt strangely numb, as if she were watching a movie of someone else's life. The woman on the screen was a tragic figure, a wife publicly humiliated. The man was a monster, a cliché of a wealthy, cheating husband. Sophia arrived early the next morning, her face a thundercloud. She didn't even say hello, just threw a stack of newspapers on the foot of the bed. Nathan and Karina's picture was on the front page of every major tabloid. "Harrington's heir and affair. one headline screamed. "Millionaire mogul parties while wife gives birth alone," shouted another. The story was everywhere. Someone at the party, likely a rival or a disgruntled employee, had leaked the timeline to the press. The article detailed Nathan's triumphant speech about his new acquisition, a deal that had officially closed the night before, and quoted an anonymous source who confirmed he'd been with Karina Morales all evening, looking inseparable. Tucked deep in the article was a quote from Victor Chen. "It's a sad day when a man values a contract more than his own family," he said, the feigned sympathy dripping with malice. "My heart goes out to Eleanor. He's using our pain for a press release," Elena said, her voice flat. She felt a strange, chilling clarity. The betrayal was no longer a private agony. It was a public spectacle. "The hospital is crawling with reporters," Sophia said, pulling the blinds shut. "They have sources in here. Someone on staff must have tipped them off about the C-section." She paced the room like a caged tiger. "I swear I am going to ruin him, Elena. I have contacts at the Times. We can release the texts from the second phone. We can bury him." Elena shook her head. "No." Sophia stopped, staring at her. "No? Elle, he deserves it. He left you. He humiliated you." "And what would that accomplish?" Elena asked, her gaze fixed on the window, on the sliver of grey city visible through the blinds. "It would just turn our son's birth into even more of a circus. He's going to have to read about this one day, Soph. I don't want to add to it. I don't want to be the vengeful wife. I just want to be a mother, her son, Liam." They had talked about the name months ago. Liam. It meant strong-willed warrior. He was certainly living up to it. She hadn't been able to see him yet. She was still too weak to be moved to the NICU. The nurses had shown her pictures on a tablet. Her tiny, perfect warrior hooked up to a terrifying array of wires and tubes. A quiet knock on the door made both women jump. A nurse peeked her head in. "Elena, your husband is here to see you." Sophia's entire body tensed. "Tell him to go to hell." "No," Elena said again, her voice surprisingly steady. "Let him in." Sophia looked at her, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Are you sure?" Elena nodded. "I'm sure, but I want you to stay." Nathan walked in, and the atmosphere in the room crackled with tension. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was rumpled, his face was pale and unshaven, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was holding a ridiculously large bouquet of white roses, which he placed awkwardly on a table. He looked like a man who had been dragged through hell. "Good," Elena thought. He took a step toward the bed, his eyes pleading. "Lena," he began, his voice raspy. "Don't call me that," she said, her tone like ice. He flinched. "Elena, I am so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. Clara said you were bleeding, but I didn't realize." "You didn't realize," Elena repeated, her voice dangerously low. "My water could have broken. I could have been in active labor, and it wouldn't have mattered, would it? Because you were busy. You were celebrating." "It wasn't a celebration," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "It was a work event. The final signing. It was critical. Karina, she planned the whole thing. I had to be there." "Karina," Elena said the name, letting it hang in the air between them. "Yes, I saw the pictures. You two looked very critical." Nathan had the grace to look ashamed. "It's not what it looks like. It was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. It's over. I ended it this morning." "You ended it because you got caught," Sophia spat from her corner of the room. Nathan ignored her, his focus entirely on Elena. "Please, let me explain. Let me make this right." "Make it right?" Elena gave a humorless laugh. "How could you possibly make this right, Nathan? You weren't there. Our son was born, and you weren't there. I was alone." Do you have any idea what that was like? To be on that operating table, not knowing if he was going to live, not knowing if I was going to live. And the one person who was supposed to be my partner was, where? Popping champagne with his mistress? The words hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, his face ashen. He's okay? The baby? He's in the NICU, Elena said, her voice cracking for the first time. He's on a ventilator, and his name is Liam. The pain on Nathan's face was raw, visceral. This, at least, seemed real. The thought of his son, a real person, in danger. Liam, he whispered. Can I see him? No, Elena said, the word a steel door slamming shut. You don't get to see him. You don't get to be a father today. You gave up that right last night. Elena, please, he begged, tears finally streaming down his face. Don't do this. He's my son, and I'm your wife, she shot back. Or was that just another one of your business arrangements? A merger you forgot to dissolve? She picked up her phone and turned the screen toward him, showing him the picture of him and Karina, their smiling faces a grotesque parody of happiness. This is who you are, Nathan. This is the choice you made. You chose this spectacle, over us, so you can live with it. Now get out. He stared at her, his face a mess of tears and regret. He opened his mouth to say something else, but Sophia stepped forward. You heard her. Get out, before I call security. Nathan looked from Sophia's furious face to Eleanor's cold, unforgiving one. He knew he was defeated. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving the scent of his expensive cologne and the pristine white roses behind. As soon as the door clicked shut, Elena's composure crumbled. The anger dissolved, leaving behind a raw, bottomless grief. She fell back against the pillows, sobbing, the pain in her heart far worse than any surgical incision. Sophia was there instantly, wrapping her arms around her, holding her as she wept for her broken marriage, for her betrayed love, and for the innocent little boy who had been born into the middle of a war. The hours after Nathan left were a blur of hushed conversations with nurses, a visit from a lactation consultant that felt like a cruel joke, and the constant, low hum of the hospital. Elena's anger had burned itself out, leaving behind a hollow ache. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the photo. Nathan's triumphant smile, Karina's possessive hand on his arm. Dr. Patel came in to check on her, her professional demeanor softened by a genuine warmth. Physically, you're recovering well, she said, reviewing Eleanor's chart. But I'm more worried about you, Eleanor. The emotional toll of all this, it's immense. I just want to see my son, Elena whispered. Soon, Dr. Patel promised. We'll get you in a wheelchair this afternoon. He's a strong little guy. He's already trying to breathe over the ventilator. The news was a tiny pinprick of light in the overwhelming darkness. Her son was a fighter. She had to be one, too. That afternoon, true to Dr. Patel's word, a nurse helped her into a wheelchair. The journey to the NICU was the longest of her life. Every jostle sent a fresh wave of pain through her abdomen, but she barely noticed. Her entire being was focused on the double doors at the end of the hall. The NICU was another world. It was quiet, save for the soft, rhythmic beeping of dozens of machines. Rows of incubators, like tiny glass spaceships, lined the walls, each holding a precious, fragile life. A nurse led her to an incubator in the corner, and there he was, Liam. He was smaller than she had imagined, his tiny body a web of wires and tubes. A breathing tube was taped to his mouth, and an IV line disappeared into his impossibly small hand. But he was perfect. He had a full head of dark hair, just like Nathan's, and long, delicate fingers. Elena reached a hand through the porthole in the incubator, her fingers trembling as she gently stroked his arm. His skin was like velvet. "Hi, baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's Mommy. I'm here. I'm so sorry this happened. But I'm here now, and I will never, ever leave you." In that moment, a fierce, primal love surged through her, a love so powerful it eclipsed everything else. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the public humiliation. This tiny, fighting soul was her world now. He was all that mattered. She stayed there for hours, talking to him, singing to him, her hand never leaving his side. She was so absorbed that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her until a familiar voice broke the silence. "Elena." She stiffened. It was Nathan. He stood in the doorway, looking hesitant and broken. He had changed into jeans and a sweater, but he still looked like a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she asked, not turning to look at him. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "I had to see him," he said, his voice thick. "I'm his father." "You're a donor," she corrected, her eyes fixed on Liam. "You made your contribution. Your services are no longer required." He flinched but took a step closer. "Please don't say that. He's so small." "He's a preemie. That's what happens when his mother goes through extreme stress and has a placental abruption," she said, the clinical terms a shield for her pain. "You should read about it. It's fascinating." "I know I messed up," he said, his voice cracking. "I know sorry isn't enough. It will never be enough. But I am begging you. Let me be his father. Let me be there for him." Elena finally turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "Be there for him? Like you were there for me? Like you were there for his birth? You want to be a father now that the hard part is over? You want to swoop in and play the doting dad for the photo ops? Because the press is still outside, Nathan? I'm sure they'd love a picture of the repentant millionaire at his son's incubator." "This has nothing to do with the press," he insisted, his voice rising. A nurse shot them a warning look, and he lowered it to a desperate whisper. "This is about him. Our son. I will do anything to fix this. I'll go to therapy. We can go to counseling. I'll sell the company if that's what it takes. I don't care about any of it anymore. I only care about you and him." For a fleeting second, she almost believed him. She saw the raw desperation in his eyes, the genuine agony. The old Eleanor, the one who loved him, wanted to forgive him, to let him in. But then she remembered the second phone, the months of lies, the champagne glass in his hand. "You don't get to fix this, Nathan," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "There is no us to fix. You broke us. You shattered us into 1,000,000 pieces. And I'm not interested in trying to glue them back together. My only priority now is him." She gestured toward the incubator. "He needs peace. He needs calm. He needs a mother who isn't a wreck. And you are the opposite of that. You are chaos. You are a storm. And I will not let you destroy him, too." "So that's it?" he asked, his face crumpling. "You're just cutting me out? I don't get to know my own son." "You will know him," she conceded, the decision forming in her mind even as she spoke the words. "You can see him. But not with me. You can arrange your visits with the nurses. We will not be here at the same time. We will co-parent from a distance. We will be business partners in the raising of this child. That is all we are now. Is that clear?" The finality in her voice was absolute. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a verdict. Nathan stared at her, his hope visibly dying. He looked past her at the tiny baby in the glass box, the son he couldn't hold, the child of the woman he had irrevocably lost. He gave a single, sharp nod, his throat too tight to speak. He turned and walked away, His shoulders slumped in defeat. Elena watched him go, a profound sadness washing over her. She had won the battle, but it felt like she had lost the war. She turned back to her son, her tiny, perfect warrior. She had protected him from the storm, but she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the storm was far from over. The elevator ride down from the NICU felt like a descent into hell. Each floor marker that dinged past was a reminder of the new, sterile reality Nathan had created for himself. He had a son he couldn't hold, a wife who looked at him with nothing but contempt, and a multi-billion-dollar empire that suddenly felt like a pile of worthless ash. He stumbled out into the hospital lobby, ignoring the whispers and stares from strangers who recognized him from the morning's tabloids. He pushed through the glass doors and was immediately blinded by a barrage of camera flashes. "Mr. Harrington, is it true you missed your son's birth for a party? Are you and Karina Morales in a relationship? What do you have to say to your wife?" He shoved his way through the media scrum, his driver pulling the town car to the curb just in time. He threw himself into the back seat, shouting his home address. As the car pulled away, he saw his own haggard face reflected in the window, the city lights blurring behind him like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Back at the penthouse, the silence was a physical presence. The half-assembled crib in the living room was a monument to his failure. The faint scent of Elena's perfume in the bedroom was a ghostly accusation. He walked into his home office and saw the second phone lying on the floor where Elena must have dropped it. He picked it up, a wave of self-loathing so intense it made him physically sick. He scrolled through the messages with Karina, the flirtatious jokes, the plans for secret meetings, the complaints about work. It all seemed so pathetic now, so juvenile. What had he been thinking? He had a brilliant, beautiful, loving wife at home, a woman who had supported him when he had nothing, and he had risked it all for what? An ego boost? A distraction? An escape? Karina was the escape. She was easy. She demanded nothing from him but his presence, his money, his power. She didn't ask him how his day was or worry when he worked too late. She didn't talk about feelings or the future or the emotional weight of building a life together. Their relationship was a transaction, a sleek, polished affair with no messy emotional attachments. Or so he had thought. His phone buzzed. It was her. "Karina, my publicist is going insane. We need to release a joint statement. Something about a professional relationship being misconstrued by a malicious source." He stared at the text. "No." "How are you?" "No." "I heard about your wife and baby. Is everything okay?" "Just damage control." He typed back a reply, his thumbs moving with a cold, detached fury. "There is no we, Karina. My son was born last night while I was with you. My wife was in emergency surgery. It's over. Don't contact me again." Her reply was instantaneous. "You can't be serious. You're just going to throw me to the wolves? After everything? My career is on the line." He didn't bother to respond. He threw the phone against the wall, watching it shatter into 100 pieces. It was a childish, pointless gesture, but it felt good. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid burning a path down his throat. He sank onto the sofa, the events of the last 24 hours playing on a loop in his mind. The triumphant speech at the party, the laughter with Karina, the missed calls, the curt email from Clara, the look on Elena's face in the hospital, the image of his tiny, fragile son in a glass box. The guilt was a physical weight, pressing down on him, crushing the air from his lungs. He had always been the hero of his own story, the poor kid from Queens who built an empire from scratch. He solved problems, he fixed things. But this was a wreckage of his own making, and he had no idea how to even begin to clean it up, His assistant, Clara, let herself in with her key, her face a carefully neutral mask. "Sir, the board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. The stock is down 12%. Victor Chen is trying to leverage the scandal to rally the shareholders against you." "Cancel it," Nathan said, his voice hollow. Clara blinked, surprised. "Sir, cancel the meeting," he repeated. "I don't care about the stock. I don't care about Victor Chen. None of it matters." He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Tell me the truth, Clara. When you called me, did you tell me it was an emergency? Did you tell me she was bleeding?" Clara's professional facade finally cracked. She looked away, her gaze falling to the floor. "Your instructions were that you were not to be disturbed during the signing under any circumstances," she said quietly. "I told you Elena had a medical issue and had gone to the hospital. I may have downplayed the severity. I was trying to protect the deal. You thought you were protecting me," Nathan finished for her, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You were all just doing your jobs, weren't you? Protecting the king and his kingdom." He stood up, the whiskey glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. "Well, the king is a fool, and his kingdom is burning." He walked out of the apartment, leaving Clara standing amidst the broken glass. He didn't know where he was going. He just walked. He walked for hours, the city streets a blur of noise and light. He ended up back at the hospital, a pathetic moth drawn to a flame he couldn't touch. He didn't try to go up to Elena's room or the NICU. He just stood across the street, staring up at the imposing brick building, at the hundreds of lighted windows. In one of those rooms, his wife was recovering from a wound he had inflicted. In another, his son was fighting for his life. He was the cause of all of it, the architect of their pain. And all he could do was stand on the outside, looking in, a ghost haunting the ruins of the life he had destroyed. The weight of his choices settled over him, a cold, heavy shroud in the lonely New York night. The NICU became their new, unspoken battleground. It was a sterile, quiet place, governed by the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the hushed tones of the nurses. Elena and Nathan had worked out a fragile truce through a series of terse text messages, coordinated by the NICU's head nurse. They were never there at the same time. Elena took the days, Nathan took the nights. They were two planets orbiting the same sun, a tiny, fragile boy in a glass box, forever kept apart by the cold, vast space of their anger and regret. During her shifts, Elena would read to Liam, her voice a soft murmur against the backdrop of the machines. She read him children's classics, poetry, even articles from the Wall Street Journal, telling him he needed to be smart if he was going to survive in this world. She learned the intricate dance of the NICU parent, how to change a diaper through the portholes of the incubator, how to read the subtle shifts in oxygen saturation levels on the monitor, how to celebrate the tiniest of victories, a gram of weight gained, a slight reduction in ventilator support. She saw the evidence of Nathan's visits. A new, impossibly small stuffed animal, a giraffe or a bear, would be tucked into the corner of the incubator. A tiny mobile of planets would be hanging from the top. A silent gift. He was trying, in his own clumsy, distant way, to be a father. One afternoon, there was a scheduling mix-up. Elena was just getting ready to leave when Nathan arrived, his face falling as he saw her. The air grew thick with unspoken words. "I was just going," she said, her voice clipped. "Wait," he said. "Please, Dr. Evans wants to talk to both of us." Dr. Evans, the head neonatologist, led them into a small, windowless conference room. He spoke in a calm, clinical tone, explaining that Liam had developed a common but serious infection. He needed a new course of powerful antibiotics, and there were risks. He's a fighter, Dr. Evans said. But the next 48 hours are critical. The news sent a fresh wave of terror through Elena. She felt Nathan's eyes on her, but she refused to look at him. She would not let him see her crumble. "What are his chances?" Nathan asked, his voice strained. "It's impossible to say for certain," Dr. Evans replied gently. "We're doing everything we can." After the doctor left, they sat in silence, the sterile room feeling like a tomb. "We should have been in here together from the start," Nathan said finally, his voice raw. "We should be a team." For him. "A team?" Elena scoffed, the anger she had been suppressing bubbling to the surface. "You don't get to talk about teams, Nathan. You're not a team player. You're a CEO. You make unilateral decisions. You did it with our marriage, and you're doing it now. What are you talking about?" "The mobile," she said, the petty grievance a stand-in for the much larger one. "The stuffed animals. You just buy things and put them in his incubator without even asking me. What if I didn't want a giraffe in there? What if I thought the planets were overstimulating?" He stared at her, dumbfounded. "You're angry about a stuffed giraffe?" "I'm angry that you think you can just buy your way back into this," she exploded, her voice rising. "You think a few toys and a fancy mobile make you a father. Being a father is showing up. It's being there for the scary meetings with the doctor. It's holding my hand and telling me it's going to be okay, even if you're terrified yourself. It's not sending gifts via proxy. He's our son, not a business client you're trying to win over." The truth of her words hung in the air between them, sharp and painful. He had been treating fatherhood like a business problem, identify the issue, throw money and resources at it, and expect a positive outcome. "You're right," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing." The admission, the raw vulnerability of it, disarmed her. For the first time, she saw not the titan of industry, but a scared, lost man who was just as terrified as she was. The next 48 hours were the longest of their lives. They broke their own rule, spending hours together in the NICU, sitting on opposite sides of the incubator, their silent vigil a shared prayer. They barely spoke, but in their shared fear for their son, a tiny crack formed in the wall of ice between them. During that time, Elena met with a lawyer Sophia had recommended. The woman was sharp, compassionate, and laid out the stark reality of her situation. She could file for divorce, and given the public nature of Nathan's infidelity and abandonment, she would be awarded a very generous settlement. Custody of Liam would almost certainly be hers. "You need to protect yourself and your son," the lawyer advised. "A man with his resources. You can't be too careful." Elena left the meeting feeling cold and pragmatic. She had to think about the future, a future without Nathan. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for Liam. On the third day, the crisis passed. The infection was responding to the antibiotics. Liam's numbers were stabilizing. The collective exhale of relief in the NICU was palpable. Elena found herself looking at Nathan, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of the man she had married. He was watching Liam, his face etched with such profound love and relief that it made her heart ache. He looked up and caught her staring. "He's going to make it," he said, a small, hopeful smile on his face. "Yes," she said, her own voice thick with emotion. "He is." The moment was fragile, a temporary ceasefire in their ongoing war. The legal papers were still in her purse. The betrayal was still a raw, open wound. But as she looked at her son, their son, she knew that their story was no longer just about the two of them. There was a third person in their marriage now, a tiny warrior who was fighting for his life, and for him, she had to find a way to navigate the wreckage. Not to rebuild what they had, but to create something new, something different, for his sake. The battle for their son's life was won. The war for their future was just beginning. 3 months later, Liam came home. The penthouse, once a symbol of their fractured life, was transformed. The sleek, minimalist decor was now cluttered with a baby swing, a diaper pail, and a mountain of tiny, brightly colored toys. The silence was replaced by a new soundtrack, the soft gurgle of a contented baby, the whir of a bottle warmer, and the occasional, sleep-deprived sob, usually Elena's. They had settled into a strange, awkward rhythm of co-parenting. Nathan had moved into one of the guest rooms. He was a constant, quiet presence, a ghost who now haunted the apartment in person. He had been true to his word. He had stepped back at his company, promoting his second-in-command to CEO and taking on a less demanding role as chairman of the board. He had sold his sports car and his collection of ridiculously expensive watches, putting the money into a trust fund for Liam. He had cut all ties with Karina Morales, who had quietly resigned from her company and disappeared from the New York social scene. He was doing all the right things, but the space between him and Eleanor remained a vast, unbridgeable chasm. Their interactions were polite, functional, and centered entirely around Liam. He's out of formula. I have his 4-month checkup on Tuesday. Can you watch him while I take a shower? They were good business partners, but they were no longer husband and wife. The divorce papers sat in a manila envelope in Eleanor's nightstand, unsigned. She told herself she was waiting until Liam was more settled, but the truth was, she didn't know what she wanted anymore. One evening, Elena was trying to soothe a colicky Liam, who had been crying inconsolably for 2 hours. She had walked him, rocked him, sung to him, and was at the absolute end of her rope. She was slumped in the rocking chair, tears of frustration and exhaustion streaming down her face. Liam's screams drilling into her skull. Nathan appeared in the doorway of the nursery, his face etched with concern. He had just gotten home from one of his rare late nights at the office. "Let me take him," he said softly. "No, I've got it," she insisted, her voice tight with a stubborn pride she couldn't explain. "Elena, you're exhausted," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You haven't slept more than 2 consecutive hours in a week. Go. Take a bath. Go to sleep. I've got him." She looked up at him, at the genuine worry in his eyes. She was too tired to fight. Wordlessly, she handed him their screaming son and walked out of the room, feeling a strange mix of relief and guilt. She ran a bath, the hot water soothing her aching muscles. She expected the crying to continue, a constant muffled wail through the walls. But after a few minutes, it stopped. There was only silence. Curious, she crept out of the bathroom and peeked into the nursery. The room was dark, save for the soft glow of a nightlight. Nathan was sitting in the rocking chair, Liam asleep on his chest, his tiny body rising and falling with his father's steady breaths. Nathan was humming, a low, tuneless melody as he gently rocked back and forth. He looked peaceful. He looked like a father. Something inside Elena, a knot of anger and resentment she had been carrying for months, began to loosen. She saw in that quiet, tender moment a glimpse of the man he could be, the man he was trying to be. She went to bed, but she didn't sleep. She just lay there, thinking. She thought about the lonely nights in the penthouse, the terror of the C-section, the public humiliation. But she also thought about Nathan's face when he first saw Liam, his quiet vigil at the incubator, his clumsy attempts to be a part of their son's life. An hour later, Nathan came into the bedroom. He thought she was asleep. He gently placed a sleeping Liam in the bassinet beside the bed, his movements slow and careful. He stood there for a long moment, just watching his son sleep. "I know," Elena said softly into the darkness. He jumped, startled. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't, she said, sitting up. Nathan, we need to talk. He sat on the edge of the bed, a respectful distance away. Okay. I saw a lawyer, she said, the words coming out in a rush. I have the divorce papers. I haven't signed them. He nodded, his face unreadable in the dim light. I know. I assumed you would. I deserve it. What you did was unforgivable, she said, her voice steady. You broke my trust. You broke my heart. I don't know if I can ever love you the way I did before. I know, he whispered, his voice thick with regret. But, she continued, taking a deep breath, I see you with him. I see you trying. And he deserves to have a father. He deserves to have a family, even if it's a broken one. She looked at him, her eyes meeting his in the darkness. I don't want to be business partners, Nathan, and I don't know if we can be husband and wife. But maybe we can try to be a family again. A different kind of family. One we build from the ground up. No more secrets, no more lies. Just honesty and forgiveness, if we can find it. Tears welled in Nathan's eyes. He didn't move closer. He didn't try to touch her. He just nodded, a profound, soul-deep gratitude on his face. Okay, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Okay, Elena. I'll take whatever you are willing to give. I will spend the rest of my life earning back your trust, for you and for him. It wasn't a Hollywood ending. There was no passionate kiss, no dramatic declaration of undying love. It was something quieter, more real. It was a truce, an accord, a fragile, tentative step out of the darkness and into a new, uncertain dawn. As Eleanor lay back down, listening to the soft breathing of her son and the quiet, steady presence of the man beside her, she knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel impossible. It felt like a second chance. Thank you for watching this story to the end. We hope it moved you. If you were touched by Elena and Nathan's journey toward a second chance, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who appreciates powerful, emotional stories. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts on their reconciliation. What would you have done in Elena's shoes? And be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another compelling drama. Your support helps us create more content just like this.